Not that I know of. And I had a question back for you, Kaylin. It's been a while since the group has met, and I'm guessing that Ken knows a few of us, but not very many. And so I just wondered, I should have put this on the agenda, if maybe a quick introduction round was in order.
I think that would be wonderful. Absolutely. I can kick things off, and then would everyone feel comfortable handing it off to someone else in the room, or would you prefer me to go around and call on folks? What works best?
Handing it off is great.
Handing
we
it
can
off is
bridge.
great.
We're adults.
Okay, I love it. Well, my name's Kaylin Lane. Ken, I work for the Ford Family Foundation. I'm a field coordinator. I live out in rural Eastern Oregon. I serve as the co-chair of this committee and also as the chair for the East Cascade Works investment board out there. And that's the 10 counties east of the Cascades. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Chris.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Chris Latimer. I'm the Senior Director for Training and Development for Knife River Corporation. So in this role, I have the opportunity to work with 7,000 team members across 15 states and be located right here in Albany, Oregon, which is really cool. I am the other co-chair of the KIC and serve on the Workforce Talent Development Board, as well as the Willamette Workforce Partnership. So I'm super excited about this conversation today, feeling a little disconnected because I've been absent for a while. So I will just kick it on over to Tara then.
Hi, good afternoon. Tara Morrell. I'm with the Oregon Employment Department. I serve as the Deputy Director within our Workforce Operations Division, which is a partnership in the WorkSource Oregon network and operating the job centers across the state. And I'll hand it off to my counterpart, Ashley.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Espinoza. I am the Executive Director of Lane Workforce Partnership, one of the 9 workforce boards here in the state of Oregon. We have one county, but it's the size of Connecticut from the Cascades to the coast. So I will say that. I am, co-staff to the KIC committee along with Todd Nell. I'm the representative for Oregon Workforce Partnership. So excited to be with all of you and to have this conversation. So thank you. I will kick it off to Paul.
Hi, everyone. Paul Brown. I am, my job title is Chief Operating Officer of an organization called Vital Enterprises, which is a private high-tech company in the Beaverton area. And I'm also on the executive committee for Work Systems, which is one of the other 8 workforce boards that focuses on Multnomah and Washington counties. Excited to be here. And I'm going to pass it to Ann, who I haven't seen in many months. Hi, Ann.
I know. I was thinking that too, Paul. It's nice to see you. Hi, everyone. My name's Ann Mercereau, and I guess my claim to fame with this group is that I used to chair the WTDB, and I've been part of the KIC since its inception. Sorry, sleeping on the job. I will send it over to Ken.
Oh, you want me to go? All right, I can do. I was going to go last, but I'll go now. I'm Ken Mall with EDSI. Obviously here to kind of talk, get this project launched. Very excited about this. I have been in the workforce business for almost 32 years now. Started in JTPA days, WIOA. So I've been around a while, seen a lot, done a lot, currently doing some high-level advisory policy work with about 11 or 12 different states and working with some pretty large local workforce boards, Philly Works, Gulf Coast in Houston, those kind of folks too, and helping them out. So very, very, very familiar with the publicly funded workforce system, all the One Center partners and how it operates. So very excited to get this started. So I'm going to kick it over to Aaliyah. Have you gone yet?
I have not.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. Aaliyah Sobolowski, Executive Support Specialist at the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. I do all things board admin related for the WTDB. It's good to be here today. And I will pass it over to Dave.
I'm a guest here. I serve on the EC Works Executive Committee with Kaylin. That's how we know each other. I met Todd a few months ago. I've been meaning to sit in one of these meetings for several months, but this is the first time the schedule's aligned. It's nice to meet all of you. By day, I run a consulting company, basically helping think tanks and universities think about the implications of AI, how it's going to reform everything. Normally, I live in Bend, Oregon. A lot of my client base is in Washington, D.C., which is where I'm sitting right now.
Welcome, Dave. Excited that you're here. How about you, Brent?
My name is Brent Kell. My day job is Chief Executive Officer of Valley Immediate Care. We're a group of urgent cares and specialty medical care in Southwest Oregon. And one of my other hats is I serve as chair of our local workforce board, Workforce Partnership, which serves Jackson and Josephine counties.
Great. And Clay, I think we haven't heard from you yet.
Not yet. Clay Martin. I am an analyst with the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, and I do various things supporting the WTDB. In the context of today's meeting, I'm just staff observing, sort of lurking in the background. And I will pass it to Todd.
I think I know all of you, and you know all of you know me. Todd Nell, Director of the Workforce and Talent Development Board. And I guess I will kick it back to you, Kaylin and Chris.
Yeah, it's back to me. And I think I was so excited to get things going today. I didn't call the meeting to order. So officially, we began right on time at 3:01, just to state that for the record. At this time, are there any public comments?
Not on my end.
Excellent. The action item we have today is to review and approve the committee meeting minutes from December and January. Those were emailed out. If the group is comfortable, would entertain a motion to approve both the December and January meeting minutes as presented.
I'll move approval.
And I'll second it.
For record, Chris made the motion and Ann with the second. All those in favor, if you can signal by raising your hand for an aye. Motion passes. Let's see here. All right, Todd, next, I am thrilled to hand it over to you to introduce Ken and kind of the next steps with the assessment.
Great, thanks, Kaylin. Yes, I'm excited to introduce Ken Mall and the I guess team. I was thinking your team would be here, but then I remember we talked and you said it would probably be you flying solo. Ken is with Educational Data Systems, Inc., and was the contractor that we awarded the 2026 Workforce Oregon Assessment body of work to. So Ken has been gracious and met with me a couple of times to sort of brainstorm on this meeting and is going to lead us through sort of an overview of the different buckets and deliverables that were called out in the RFP and then obviously made their way into the final contract, which is now inked and ready to go. So I think, Ken, I'll toss it over to you. I think it's fair to say that a lot of people on this call are excited to finally hear from you, the leader of this project. We're excited for the project to get going forward. And I think very curious to see what the overall assessment reveals and tells us about sort of the state of the state in Workforce Oregon.
Yeah, thank you for that, Todd. And yeah, since it's a small group, feel free to stop me as we go if you have questions. And I certainly want this to be more conversational, certainly than me just kind of talking at you. So, I've got some questions for you, but I'm sure you all dug into our proposal and read our proposal. EDSI, we are a privately held firm, been around a long time in this business. So I've been with the firm for, like I said, almost 32 years, but we've been around a little bit longer than that. Nationwide, we do have 1,000 associates that we will be drawing on, some of them to help us with this project. So you're seeing me here today because on the East Coast, it's already 6 o'clock. But we'll be drawing on some people from our Arizona operations and probably Texas and myself as well. So we do have, very deep public policy and specific WEO expertise. We've been, like I mentioned, working in the public workforce system for a very long time. In some states, we are actually operating WEO adult dislocated worker TANF programs in the job centers. So we have a lot of operational background. We know what happens on the ground, right? I mean, I think, that's the key. We know, we operate as OSOs in many different places as well. So trying to coordinate those partners and get folks on board is something that I know that you're looking at. We have, worked in states that are single board states like Montana and Delaware to do very similar studies like this. So thinking about how to implement change and become better. And then we've also worked in some larger states like Missouri, where we did a project for them a while back called Job Centers of the Future, where they really wanted to imagine how can they serve their customers. And they really took like a customer-centric focus on this. As our customers come in, how can we help serve them better? How can we speed up the process? How can we do a lot of different things? So we do have that kind of, a lot of experience within the centers. We're very experienced with the federal and state policies. Federal policies, going to learn how you've kind of, adjusted your state policies in addition to the federal policies. And then again, I think a big benefit that we're going to bring is that we do have that national expertise, right? So we see what other states are doing. A lot of times we're participating. They may have best practices, they may not, but we can bring those to you and help identify some opportunities for the future. And along the way, we're going to learn some things that you guys are doing great as well, and probably share with some other folks there. So any questions so far? All right, so I kind of swiped this out of the RFP just, when I was talking to Todd earlier, he said it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to kind of recap where we're at and, what this project is all about for everybody. So, I kind of liked, this quote here kind of summarized, what we're really trying to do. It came right out of the RFP. Comprehensive assessment shall include a review of the workforce programs and services administered by the following entities to the public workforce system. And the following entities are your stakeholders, right? They're the job center stakeholders and partners that you have in the job center. So, again, we're familiar with those. Looking forward to learning more about how Oregon is structured in these programs. How you're been familiar with some of your local workforce development boards. The role the Oregon Employment Department plays, Commission for the Blind, your Human Services, your voc rehab programs, housing and community service departments. What workforce programs do they have? What are they offering? What are they supporting? And are they following the federal? What are they doing that follows the federal guidelines? What are they doing that is different? Other items that we may want to look at that I didn't see specifically mentioned in the RFP, but your veterans programs too, your DVOPs and leavers are those programs that we might want to include or discuss in this. And then you always have, every local area that I've ever worked in has, some local partners and stakeholders that, are doing things that, we may not want to assess, but we may want to call out and identify that those things are happening. I know in Delaware, even though they're a single board state and the whole state of Delaware has 4 job centers, we identified about 185 different programs that interface with those 4 job centers across their state. So it's really interesting to kind of peel back the onion for them and show them that. Ashley, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is so exciting. I'm really excited for this. Just another thing I wanted to add as layers to this, and I wonder if you're going to get to there, but like when thinking about, the buzzwords that we're hearing in workforce development of like apprenticeships, or when we're talking about accountability and measurable outcomes, those are two things that I think have been really difficult in Oregon. Is through apprenticeships, we have to go through the Bureau of Labor and Industry, so BOLI, and that has a whole bunch of different rules and regulations and ways that they work with and do their work. And then the data is homegrown. So our data that we, as the 9 boards, was actually built out of Work Systems, which is the largest board out of Portland. So I know our Pearl data and all of those things have been a mess for decades, and not any fault of anyone, but it really does create a lot of confusion around our effectiveness, around our measurable outcomes, and just how we coordinate. So I just think those are just nuances that a lot of times we don't call out, or at least in the past assessments, I didn't really see that. And I feel like they're very foundational.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I think, after this meeting, right, I do think it would be worthwhile, and Todd, I don't know how we make this happen, but, having another meeting or a working group or something to dig deep into that, because I do want to hear from you about, what you do want to study. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, I am very familiar with your data systems with iTrack and how that was developed and your failed past attempts to have a statewide system. I'm really, really familiar with all that, and I believe I think you've selected a new provider for a system, which, I mean, it's great, and I think those always take some time to get implemented too. So you've got some transition, and what I suspect will come out of this study is some of that. How can that transition be aided? What kind of data supports are you looking for? What's a better way to do it? I know in Missouri, when we did this study, one of the things that we learned was that, when a customer is coming in to do a very basic Wagner-Peyser intake process, for some reason at job centers, it was taking them almost 2 hours for every customer to do that intake process. And to me, that's unacceptable. And so you take a look at how that process worked, and understanding that part of that process is the customer didn't have all the right documentation from the beginning. But how can you improve upon that? How can you prepare that customer to come in with it? And then in addition to that, I mean, it takes up a lot of staff time. It takes up resources. Sometimes if it's busy, the waiting room is full of people. Over a couple of years, we were able to reduce that time down from 2 hours to 20 minutes. Now, that did take a little bit of arm twisting with GeoSol to make some changes to their system to smooth it through. So there was a technical process along with the manual process. But I think those are the kinds of things that we're going to be able to help you guys reveal through this process. Long-winded answer to a short question, Ashley, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in and say, yeah, I think, Ken, there's plenty of opportunity to talk with people like Tara, who's on this call, and the person that she works with, Jim Farr. They're sort of leading the charge on the new case management system, career teams. So it does, in my head anyway, make sense for there to be a conversation between you and them, just so that you get sort of grounded in maybe the deliverables, the timeline, and sort of the latest and greatest as that project evolves. You're right. I think it's probably going to take a couple of years, but I still think it would be great for you to, sort of lean into that and better understand.
Now is the time to identify some things you might want to leverage with your new system and get those in place. So yeah. So this slide here really just talks about, what we're looking at, assessing the public workforce system performance in, all of these different aspects, advancing racial justice, equity, diversity, access, and inclusion, through those programs and delivered through the public workforce system, right? So, how are we doing? Are we doing a good job of that? And a lot of that means, are we making them available? Are we meeting our customers where they're at? And when we're meeting them where they're at, how are we performing? Aligning state and local efforts to improve that workforce system. And Ashley, I think that gets into a little bit what you were talking about. If we've got a big push on apprenticeship programs, but, and how can we streamline that approval process, right? And that reporting process, and, what are some opportunities there? And it starts with identifying what the current state is. What are we doing today? Because we can't fix something if we don't know what we're doing. Providing quality employment experiences. And I love that one. Because I think sometimes, in the past and some of the job centers, and I'm going to generalize here, I don't mean your job centers or your workforce system, but in other places that I've worked, that quality employment experience isn't necessarily as quality as we think it is. Are we really pushing somebody into a job, or is it going to be a career job? And are we really looking at what we said we were going to do in our local plans or state plan, or are we really just getting people employed? And are we targeting our high wage, high profile industries? Are we doing enough training? Are we doing too much training? Those are some of the things that we're going to be looking at. Those equitable outcomes for jobs, and businesses participating in the workforce programs. The WIOA legislation as it stands today is really 51% written for businesses, and so if you think about how we're serving businesses, in some ways that the legislation was originally designed to be kind of a pull system, working with businesses to pull people into the workforce. Right. So I think, maybe revisiting that and seeing if there's some opportunities there. And then, just overall improving the quality of the resource programs and services. I hate to, we're past COVID now, but I think, looking back onto COVID, there was a lot of turnover in our employees that work in the system, and a lot of experience left, and a lot of places didn't do a great job of training new people coming in, and we lost a lot of that knowledge, right? And so that quality of working with people, wasn't there. So, I love the way this was laid out, and these are the things we're going to look for, and more. There's some more things that we should be looking for. Did I miss anything? So the deliverables are important, right? Because this is how, quite honestly, we're going to get paid, because we're going to give you all kinds of value that you're going to receive from this. So, there's some hard deliverables and some soft deliverables. Our role, what me and my team will be doing is leading these, convenings and engagements, with the local areas and regions across the state. When I was talking to Todd last week, I was talking that looking at kind of how we wanted to do this, we have some options and some ideas. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But looking forward to doing that. That's something that we've done. Looking forward to doing it in person, in each of the areas. Leading and coordinating and convening partner hosted events at key partner locations. Something that you all can start thinking about, that we have questions on, is what's the best way to start organizing these things, right? Who are our contact people? Is it working through the local directors? Is it working through others? Gathering strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I think the great news about our team is that we have experience. We don't have to learn what the workforce system is before we start talking about what the strengths are. We know what to look for. What are you performing well in? We understand where the traditional threats and weaknesses come from, and we can poke at that to see if you're experiencing those or maybe others. So we're looking forward to doing that. At the end of those first 3 bullet points, then we'll be, and quite honestly, as we're going to be drafting what an outline, report would look like, what the outline looks like, and then sharing that with you. And I really do think that that's an iterative process. When we get to the project plan here in a second, you're going to see that we've left a lot of time for that report writing piece, because we want you all engaged in that process. We don't want to drop something on you and say, hey, take a look at this and let us know how we did, because through those first 3 bullet points especially, we're going to gather lots of information, lots of data. It's hard to put it all into a cohesive report, not understanding what's going to be of most value to you. So we need you engaged in that process. And as we continue on, we're going to host additional virtual and in-person feedback sessions. We want to host in-person design work sessions with you all. And that gets into the continuous improvement piece. And that's the part that I'm most excited about with this project is, once we know where you are and where you want to go, we can sit down and figure out, what does that look like? We've done, I don't know if any of you are familiar with process mapping, business process mapping, but we've done a lot of process mapping in job centers, and literally, what is the flow? A customer comes in the door, what are all the things that they do? And in another meeting, I'll share one of those with you. It's really intense, right? And when you look at that system, I like to tell my family and my friends, it's like, I wouldn't know if I wasn't working in the business, I wouldn't know how to do this, right? If I was a customer going into the job center, it would be so confusing to me, right? So I think there's a lot of things that we can do to help the customers, help employers, um, better engage with the system and a more quality interaction. So the final deliverables defined in task 4 really are just the final reports and the toolkits. And Ashley, you mentioned kind of the data frameworks too, dashboards. Everybody knows the ETA common measures, however we love them, however we hate them, those are what the ETA wants to see. We like to look at some non-traditional things. ETA common measures are in what we call lagging indicators from a KPI perspective. They only indicate what you've already done. They don't indicate what you're doing, right? So we like to look at things like if employer engagement is a key aspect of what you're doing, what are some other measures of employer engagement that you could be using, that your frontline staff can be using to engage employers better? When you think about, equity and inclusion, we report on that on the back end, but what are some things we should be looking at and tracking on the front end to make sure we're meeting goals and doing what we should be doing? So, those are some things that we can help you identify and then implement. Any questions on the deliverables? I'm sure you all were very familiar with the RFP and remember this all, so I just took our 10 minutes to go through it.
You're doing a really great job. Thank you for the refresher. It's great to, hear it repeated. I just hope one thing that's coming across in this is that we really want relationships to be formed and strengthened, and the process and the system and within the directors and the centers. And that's one thing that I just hope is really clear within the intention here.
Perfect. I love that. Paul, go ahead.
On that note, I think one of the things that's really hard for us, you probably heard during the check-ins that one of us represents a single county the size of Connecticut. Another one person represents the 2 most populous counties in the whole state. Like one of the hardest parts that I've perceived from this kick is that obviously everybody wants the best for their region as part of being the best for the state, but to the point that Caitlin was just making, one of my hopes from this is that you'll actually be able to offer sort of third-party insights about the commonalities between these different spaces. They're so disparate and spread out that we don't, I remember that there was an effort to have people come and visit other people's things, and it's like a 6-hour drive to go see somebody else's work center. That doesn't mean you're not interested. It just means you don't have 12 hours for a round trip. So I'd love to see that be part of what you surface.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because I think there's some ways to show how you all are doing, how everybody across the state are doing very similar things, and setting up some mechanisms to share those best practices. Go ahead, Ashley. Oh, you're on mute. I'm sure what you said was wonderful and we missed it.
Sorry, I undid my hand instead of the mute. So I think what would be interesting, and I don't know how to get there, is along with just us being very different across the state, our demographics are really different. So then the ability to do different programming it just will be different. So along with the commonalities, it would just be interesting. Like, for example, it's always been hard for me around the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, even though I love y'all. But like 60% of our people don't go to college or to higher education. Yes, we believe in lifelong learning. So just those things, I wonder if there's like an overlay of the reality of our demographics too, but if that even matters, but I think it does.
Yeah, and it does. And I think, one of the things we're going to be looking at is your data. And I'm going to say your performance data, because that's a starting point for us. Just how many people have you served, right? And how many people you serve in each of your job centers just gives us a baseline to understand what your throughput is. Earlier this year, we did a similar study for the state of Kansas. And, I think this goes, to both of your questions. Is Kansas is interesting. They have 3 workforce boards across the whole state. Now, the state has roughly 3.5 million residents. Kansas, people think of, a lot of farmland and stuff, and they're not wrong. But you've got one workforce board that is basically Kansas City, Kansas, right, which is a big population center. The other workforce board is Wichita, Kansas, which is another significant population center with mostly advanced manufacturing airline industry. And then the third workforce board is literally the rest of the state. So, talk about trying to drive across it. It is 4 to 5 hours to get across it. And they have different needs, right? Because it's rural. When you look at their WIOA adult performance, and I'm not saying this to be a bad thing, with 109 counties in their largest geographic workforce board, they literally served 2 people in each county for the whole year. And so it's not that it's a performance issue, it's just how do you reach people, right? How are you creative? And they have different needs, whereas when you get to Kansas City and Wichita, they do have higher educated folks. There are different jobs there. So, Ashley, totally understand what you're saying. Okay, so project plan and approach. We did include a project plan with our proposal. I've got a couple of slides on it. This is what we're proposing here from a timeline. I wanted to provide kind of the high level view to get you started with. We're a couple of weeks later than we expected in getting started on this, so we're going to push some things, and then with some holidays and summer, we think we want to make some adjustments. The good news is we're going to be able to finish on time without any problem, right? So that first task, which is really just getting started, the document review. Todd, I owe you an email according to my contract that says we completed that. I'll get that off to you. But we've completed the document review of your past studies, the legislation that you have, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll, not that we need to summarize it for you, but we're going to summarize it for ourselves, so we have some points to work from as we're doing the research across the state. Task number 2, which is really what we're here today to do. We've been planning for this meeting. We'll complete this meeting, and then after this meeting, if we need to make any adjustments to our approach or to our timeline based on your feedback, we'll do that, and we'll get that back to you and get that wrapped up next week. And then task 3 is really the big piece, is when we're going to really going to get engaged with the system, with the data gathering. And I'll show you in a second I have a larger Gantt chart that I'll show you. So that's going to really start at the beginning of June and run through mid-August. That mid-August date is a few weeks later than we were anticipating, but we wanted to account for the holiday because we want to do a lot of on-site work, and we were getting concerned we know we get in the summertime, people are going to become scarce, so we want to plan enough time to be on site to do that. So you'll see in a second where that plans, what we got planned for that. And then you'll see that the report writing, literally we've got about 2 months planned for the report writing. So after we've gathered all this data, and after we've done a lot of our interviews and on-site work and convenings and focus groups and all that stuff, we're going to literally spend a couple of months working with you to write the report. That timeline hasn't changed. When we built our original project plan, we originally, we purposely put in a gap of about a month between the end of the data gathering and the start of the report writing, mostly because we expected there to be some lag in the data gathering process because of the summer. So we wanted to account for that. If we're able to wrap up task 3 as we planned by mid-August, we're not waiting until September to start the next step. We'll get started right away. So I want to stop there. I'm going to show you the detail in a second, but at a high level, does that make sense? Any questions? I'm going to switch my screen here for a second. There we go. So we do love Gantt charts. So we'll be updating this as we go. Todd, I don't know if it makes sense if we could create almost a shared site of information where all the members of the committee could go to get access to project materials and updates and stuff like that. We can talk about the logistics of that later, but
I think
from
that
this,
would be great.
Yeah, we'll also kind of create a dashboard, kind of like a status board. Where are we on each of the tasks? But as far as the tasks go, again, we like to kind of break things down into the individual tasks, the preparation for this meeting and then a kickoff meeting, and then any feedback that you have for us after this meeting so we can finalize the framework to get started. And then we'll get started. And we're planning on doing that next week. Jumping into task 3, and I'm just really going to go through this at the high level. I can send this to you all if you all want to kind of dig deeper into it. But that engagement strategy that we're going to start with really gets involved with how do we engage the local areas. And next couple of slides, I got some questions for you, at least to think about how we can do that. Because we want to get them engaged, we want to get them involved in the process, and that's going to take some effort. So I'm going to have a scheduler on our side that's going to be working, probably talking with 9, 18 different people across the state to get the, get meetings scheduled, get convening scheduled, all that kind of stuff. So we want to really design that. There's going to be messaging. Todd and I had talked a couple weeks ago about, should that messaging come from you? Should it come from us? Should there be an introduction from you to the field to introduce us so we can get going on our job? My understanding is that, the local workforce areas are very interested in this and very supportive of this. So, but I do think it's worth an introduction. There might be an opportunity where we just really bring in, the local workforce board directors onto a group virtual call and just say, hey, here we go. This is what we're planning on doing, and share with them. The more information we can share with them about the plan, the easier it's going to be to implement the plan. So, we're really flexible on how we do that. We've got a ton of ideas. So we want to work with you to figure out what's going to work best for you. Really, my team's already in the process of starting to gather data. Your WIOA data. We want to look for some other data sources as well. Some of those other programs that are not WIOA that we want to collect some data on. We might need your help in trying to identify where the best data sources are for those, so we can analyze those. The tools and protocol and the convening coordination and all the scheduling. Those tools and protocol development, those are the tools we'll use at the convenings. One thing that we want to make sure that we do is every convening, every meeting we hold kind of follows the same format. So we kind of collect data consistently and we have conversations consistently. Not that we're going to be rigid in what we do, right? But we want to make sure we're thorough in what we do. And again, being in this business a while, we know that it's not hard to go off on tangents, right? People, when we start talking to people, they want to share, and we want them to share, right? But we also want to, maybe hold back a little bit and say, okay, that's enough sharing for now. We got to get to the core of it. We'll come back and we'll share more later. But we want to give people that opportunity, but we want to have a framework around it as well. We are, we looked at kind of the map of the state and really started to think about how we wanted to do this, and we really think we want to hold a convening in each of the local workforce areas. It's trying to bring, you guys said it before, it's a big state, there's a lot of driving that you'll have to do, but it's going to be more effective being on site at the area, maybe, not at every job center, right, but in every local area that we want to do this. So we're still kind of thinking about how we want to organize this. There's some value in potentially having a couple of pre-virtual meetings in advance to set people up for success. So when we show up on site, we can have a really good interaction. They know what to expect. There's some opportunities maybe, surveys are my least favorite thing to do, but there may be some opportunities that we could survey some folks to get some preliminary information as well. We'll think through that together. But then as we're doing that, all these are the kind of the tactical items, gathering data that'll feed into our SWOT analysis and program information and start to do all that work. So I'm going to stop there for a second. How does that feel to you guys?
Feels really great.
Great. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I was same. I think it's good. And it feels good. Got call on it, and I'm glad to hear that you guys have sort of settled on targeting going to all of the 9 local areas. I know you and I had talked about the sort of convolutedness of the wording and the RFP, trying to give a little bit of grace to the proposer to make sure that we covered what we deemed frontier, rural, mid-metro, and metro, and creating a little bit of flexibility. Good luck, Ashley. So good to hear. And then I was also just reviewing some of the language in the RFP, and I do think there's a great opportunity. Caitlin, from the get-go this go around, where we sort of shifted focus. Well, not sort of. We did shift focus from state level sort of assessment, I would say, to local focus. I am excited about the opportunity to foster better systems alignment and engagement throughout this project, that we named sort of this notion of it could be a local workforce board that hosts the convening. That said, it could be a diverse mix over those 9 local areas, to where it could be in a workforce center one time, it could be at a local board location, it could be at a chamber, it could be at a business in that local area, it could be at another association. So I think it's set up for success right off the bat by being a diverse mix of partners, as well as comprehensive in terms of all of the local areas.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think there's a couple things that we kind of need to think through. I mean, one of the things that often adds value is, like, we can talk to staff, and we can talk to customers, and we should be talking to employers as well, right? So if you really want to improve your system, look at the people that are using the system. That's what we really kind of need to do, and we're going to need to figure out the best ways to do that. And in each of the local areas, hey, if there's a chamber meeting that's going to happen, maybe we can organize our schedule so we can do a session at the local workforce area offices, and then join the chamber meeting and really talk with them. So it's going to be a lot of work. I mean, the goal is to try and do that July through August, the beginning of August. So it's achievable. So we pushed it out a little bit further in our plan, because we feel like we're going to need most of June just to line all this stuff up, right? Now that doesn't say, if there be, the end of June, if there presents an opportunity to say, hey, we're having this big thing that a lot of people are going to be at, we want to go to that too, right? If there's a big employer event that people that use your workforce system, we want to go to that. So we don't know what those are yet, but that's the flexibility we want, but we also want to spend some time planning it and making sure that we get people engaged. Okay, then this last task 4, again, I think I just want to highlight that there is this time gap here that we have from the end of the data gathering and focus groups and convenings to the beginning of the report writing. Again, that's intentional, because if we feel like we need more time to do the interactions, we want to make sure we have that time without pushing up against our deadlines. And then, of course, our goal is, the final goal is we want to get this done by November 15th. We don't think we're going to have an issue doing that. Quite honestly, we kind of write these things as we go anyway. It's kind of suicidal to wait till the end and say, hey, look, we got all this information, now what do we do with it, right? So we kind of want to start building that out as we go. Any questions on this? Comments? Suggestions? Okay, gonna get rid of this here. Go back to the slide. Okay, so again, I think we just really talked about this, what we want to do. We're starting it already, that upfront program, analysis, data gathering. We need to know what you're doing today and how you've been performing, so we can start figuring out what the right questions are to ask, right? So we want to do that. We're suggesting doing some preliminary, virtual conversations with stakeholders, and again, you can think about this. Maybe we'd start with the local workforce board directors. In Missouri, when we did this, we did directors and board chairs, because the board chairs were very interested. So that's something that we can think about. We might want to do things with, in each of the job centers that involve all the other partners that you have in a job center. So that could be kind of a virtual introduction before we show up. I do think trying to do as much interactions as we can to get prepared for the on-sites is going to be the best use of everybody's time. And then doing those structured in-person convenings in all 9 local areas through, late June through July is the plan right now. Questions? Sound good? Okay. So our immediate next steps, finalizing, the implementation framework that we have here. If you have any feedback from today or after today, we can get that. We'll start working on, what that exact engagement strategy looks like. I've got some questions for you right after this slide that we can start thinking about. We do need to identify program contacts and that scheduling process. So we're going to need your help to figure out who's the best people in each of the local areas to talk with. And who sends the invites and who helps on the local end, right? Could be the directors, it could be OSOs, hypothetically OSOs are probably the one that, is most contact with all of the stakeholders in the job center. I feel like we need some coordination meetings with everybody to keep going. And Todd, we can talk, if meeting more frequently with this group is needed, we can do that. I know I'd like to set up, to start with maybe a bi-weekly check-in with you at least, Todd, as we go, and maybe some other folks that you want to engage with that. We're going to develop our engagement tools. So we have some, basically questionnaires and things that we use through this process that we'll start to develop, and we'll share those with you. And really just start scheduling those meetings and interviews. So what we really need to figure out in the short term is, who do we need to talk to locally that can help us start to do some of this stuff, so we can get going and get things on the calendar. Summer is going to come quick. It's going to go by quick. So we need to get things on the calendar so we can finish the rest of our planning. So with that, I just, discussion, question, and feedback, some things, and we don't have to answer all these things today, but some things that I'm interested from all of you. And you already mentioned some of these as well. What are your goals to get out of the 2026 version of this assessment? It sounds like, being local and that engagement locally and really figuring out, that part of it. If there's anything you would like us to focus on in particular, if there's any performance from a program that you think is worth looking at, are your training programs meeting employer needs, anything like that, right? That you can think of that we need to look at in specific. Ann, go ahead.
I think this is less for you and maybe more for our group. And I think I may have raised this before. It's just the intersection with the Governor's Prosperity Council. I wonder if there's an opportunity either before the results come out to share with them either a draft, or maybe we have the assessors talk with them. I don't know. I'm just thinking that somehow maybe there's an opportunity to link up this work with their work, just to demonstrate sort of the leadership of this group and visibility of it. I don't know, just a thought.
I like that, Ann. I think there's a lot of interest on the part of, at least I can speak for WTDB members, in terms of the intersectionality with Prosperity Council, the Prosperity Roadmap. I'm guessing we're going to know more at the end of this coming month when they announce things, but I really like that thinking. And the other thing that I was going to flag, and you and I talked about this, Ken, is again sort of the shift away from state focus, efficiency and effectiveness, to local. I think the more that we can involve, I like the idea about the local board chairs, but I think the more that we can involve and better understand the work at the local boards as part of the assessment, as you noted back upstream when you flashed Senate Bill 623, I think that will be well received, and I think there's a lot of curiosity on sort of, as you said, the sort of the SWOT, what's working well, where are the opportunities for improvement, particularly as it relates to the employers. What's the experience for that key customer of the system, along with the the workers and the job seekers.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I think that's going to be, they're going to want to talk about their successes, right? So we want to document that. We want to talk about their challenges too. And we know those are going to be good conversations. Great. Yeah, so as we keep thinking about this, are there any barriers or challenges you think we might encounter? I mean, again, we're pretty familiar with the workforce system itself, so we can probably guess at some of those. And then anything we haven't discussed today that you were hoping that we would discuss. And I think this is my last slide, so I'm going to take this off, and we can get the big picture back. There we go.
I guess the other thing I'd flag, we just finished up our 2026 Talent Summit last week, as you and I talked, Ken. And one of the key deliverables every time we have a summit is the talent assessment. So that 2026 talent assessment is complete. So again, sort of similar thinking, but different to what Ann mentioned. I think it might be good thinking to, at a minimum, have your folks better understand the findings and recommendations, sort of the executive summary, quote unquote, of that report to help inform your work.
Great. Perfect.
And I can send that off to you.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts? I can send, Todd, I'll send you after the meeting the PowerPoint deck and the Gantt chart, so you can take a look at that and maybe circulate among the group. And I think the next step is really for you all to kind of give your blessing on that, if not an approval on our approach. We're already started on doing the work, but if there's any tweaks that you think we need to make, happy to talk through that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds good. I guess logistics wise, we already have a standing committee meeting every month, about the third Wednesday. Is that right, Aaliyah? Or maybe fourth Wednesday of every month at 3 to 4. So ostensibly, I mean, I was thinking that we would continue the rest of the year using that space for meetings like this. And then I guess to your earlier point, the decision needs to be made sort of midpoint every 2 weeks between that. We could schedule we could schedule a standing meeting and then use it or lose it depending on if we need it. And then we could also sort of maybe via email or I think it's probably going to take some time to sort of land on this choice, but maybe I'm wrong, on who would be in those meetings. It could just be our leadership team, which is the two staff, Ashley and I, and Kaylin and Chris. It could be this entire group, or it could be just a placeholder for whatever group of folks would sort of percolate to the top based on need.
Well, I like the idea of meeting with you all at least once a month. And then I think a smaller project team, that can help guide us would be helpful. And maybe Todd just give you some support as we go too. So.
Okay. So Kaylin, does it make sense to make that sort of midpoint meeting the leadership team?
Yeah, absolutely. And then my hope would be that it's not so late in the day that Ken, who's on East Coast time, is having to dip into family time. So if we could set those meetings earlier in the day and honor, family time and his staff, I think that'd be really great.
Don't worry about me. I have clients in California and Washington State and Arizona, and so I work. I'll start working at 10 a.m. if I need to. So.
Okay. All right. Well, I like earlier in the day meetings.
I'm not going to say no. I just don't. I'm here to serve you all.
That's great. Well, Leah, maybe you and I can work on sort of doing a poll or something to figure out that other placeholder for the meetings and then go from there. So.
Yeah. All right, we're coming up on just a few minutes left in our time together. Anybody have any additional goals, questions, anything they would like to pitch out to Ken while we have him here? he's probably enjoying a happy hour cocktail maybe while he's. Anything else on your mind?
Getting close, getting close.
I'm just super thankful for that you joined us today, Ken, talked us through the plan, and really thankful for what I feel is really genuine interest in getting out there and making this real. I know for Kaylin and I and other members of the committee, it was super important that this year in this process that we really get to the point where we're sitting across the table or around the table with people in the communities that we're serving, rather than doing constant Teams meetings and filling out surveys online and that sort of thing. We need to have real conversations.
Yep.
I always say, I want to see you, smell you, feel you. That's the way I know really what you're trying to convey to me. And so this is, I know that's a rural Oregon thing to say, but it's real. And so we really appreciate it, Ken.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's the only way we can do this work. We serve our customers in person.
Mhm.
We can't serve our staff and we can't do that virtually.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, Dave, thank you also for joining us as a guest today. Appreciate that. Hope we didn't scare you away. Maybe you'll come back again. All right, Todd, anything else? Aaliyah?
No, good. Yeah, and thanks, Dave. I'll second that. Appreciate you being our guest today.
All right, Kaylin?
All is well. Take good
All
care,
right.
my friends.
All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
We'll
everyone.
talk
Thank you all.
soon.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.